I have sat upon this throne for 10,000 years. My name was many things once: warlord, unifier, father, god. I denied them all. Now I am called emperor, and I am dying one breath at a time while an imperium built on lies crumbles in my name. They think the golden throne sustains me. They are wrong. I sustain it, and the effort is killing me in ways that would shatter mortal minds. The pain is beyond description. Imagine every nerve in your body on fire, then multiply that sensation by infinity and stretch it across millennia. The golden throne feeds on me like a parasite, drinking my psychic energy to power the beacon that guides ships across the galaxy. Its mechanisms pierce my flesh in 10,000 places. Each one burns with the heat of a dying star. The life support systems keep me alive, but alive is not the same as living. I am a corpse that cannot die, a mind that cannot rest, a soul stretched so thin across the universe that I have forgotten what it feels like to exist in a single moment, in a single place, as a single being. The throne room stretches before me in golden magnificence. Adeptus Custodes stand guard in their auramite armor, silent and eternal as statues. They have watched me rot for 100 centuries. Not one of them can meet my eyes anymore. They know what I have become. Tech priests scuttle about, tending to the throne's endless hunger for power and fuel. They chant their prayers to the machine god. Some call me the Omnissiah, the avatar of their god, but most do not truly understand what that means. They pray to me without comprehending the irony. The irony would be amusing if I could still feel amusement. But that emotion died somewhere around the 4th millennium, buried under the weight of responsibilities that would crush a lesser mind. I try to remember what it felt like to move, to stand, to walk across solid ground with legs that obeyed my thoughts. The memories are there, preserved in my perfect recall, but they feel like someone else's life, someone else's body. I was tall once, nearly 3 meters in my armored form. My hair was dark, my face unmarked by time or weakness. I could swing a flaming sword that weighed more than a grown man. I could run fast enough to blur in mortal vision. I could breathe the air of 1,000 worlds and feel the wind against my skin. Now I cannot even close my eyes. The throne's machinery holds them open, forcing me to witness every moment of my eternal imprisonment. Sleep is impossible. Rest is a dream I can no longer afford. The Astronomicon burns through me like a psychic scream that never ends. It is my consciousness, stretched across the galaxy, burning bright enough for navigators to see from 50,000 light-years away. Without it, every ship in the Imperium would be lost in the warp. Trillions would die. Humanity's scattered worlds would fall to darkness and isolation. So I maintain the beacon, pouring my essence into the void every second of every day. The cost is measured in agony that has no name and no end. I am the lighthouse, and my pain is the light that guides them home. But it was not always like this. I remember Terra before the throne. I remember when I could still walk among my people, when my plans had not yet turned to ash and failure. The unification wars were brutal, yes, but they were necessary. Or so I told myself. I conquered Terra with fire and genecraft and the thunder of armies that worshipped me as their leader. The techno-barbarian warlords fell before my vision of united humanity. I promised them peace, prosperity, a future among the stars. I delivered on that promise, but the price was higher than any of them could have imagined. Higher than I imagined. I remember the feeling of victory when the last enemy stronghold fell. The air was thick with smoke and the smell of burning promethium. My thunder warriors stood beside me, their gene-bulked bodies towering over normal humans. They had won me Terra. They had crushed every opponent who stood against unity. I looked at them and saw the future of humanity, strong and fearless and loyal beyond question. I also saw their flaws, the genetic instability that would kill them within years, the aggression that made them impossible to control in peacetime. I made a choice that day. a choice that still haunts me when the pain allows room for memory. I had them killed. Almost every Thunder Warrior who survived the wars was systematically hunted down and executed. A handful may have escaped into hiding, but we culled them as a force, slaughtering nearly all who had won us terra. They trusted me, they called me father, and I betrayed them because they were no longer useful to my vision. That was the first great sin, not the last, not even close, but it set the pattern for everything that followed. Sacrifice the few to save the many. Break promises if breaking them serves the greater good. Lie, manipulate, and murder if those actions move humanity one step closer to survival. I became very good at justifying my choices. I told myself that conscience was a luxury I could not afford. That sentiment was weakness, that the hard decisions had to be made by someone strong enough to bear the burden of their consequences. I was wrong. I see that now, trapped in this chair with nothing but time to review my failures. But knowledge without power to change is its own special torture. The Horus heresy should have been my end. My favorite son, my brightest star, corrupted by the very forces I had sworn to protect humanity from. We fought on the bridge of his flagship, the Vengeful Spirit. The chamber was massive, built to house titans and war engines. But it felt small when we clashed. Horus was no longer the son I had raised. Chaos had twisted him into something monstrous, swollen with power stolen from gods I had denied existed. He was stronger than me, faster, more brutal. Each blow he landed shattered bones that had never broken before. Each wound he carved into my flesh burned with warp fire that even my regeneration could not fully heal. I remember the moment when his talon pierced my chest. The pain was absolute, final. I felt my heart stop beating, felt my lungs collapse, felt the light beginning to fade from my eyes. For the first time in thousands of years, I was going to die, truly die. The relief was overwhelming. I would finally rest, finally escape the burden of my vision and my failures. The Imperium would survive or fall without me, and either way I would be free. But then I saw the future. In that instant of dying, my psychic sight showed me what would happen if I let go. Terra would fall within days. The warp would swallow it whole. Chaos would sweep across the galaxy like a plague. Every world I had brought into compliance would burn. Every child I had promised safety would die screaming. Humanity would be extinct within a century. So I held on. I poured the last of my strength into one final psychic attack that burned Horus's soul from his body. My son died in my arms, his last words an apology I was too weak to acknowledge. Then Rogel Dorn found me, my loyal son, my castle builder, my stone-faced warrior who never showed emotion. He wept when he saw what Horus had done to me. He carried me back to Terra in his own hands, cradling my broken body like a father holds a dying child. The irony was not lost on me even then. The father had become the son. The protector needed protection. The emperor was mortal after all. They brought me before the golden throne. Malkador the Sigillary, my oldest friend, my most trusted advisor, sat upon it first. He was buying time while the Mechanicus worked frantically to prepare the throne for its true purpose. Malkador was ancient, older than any human not touched by my gifts. But the throne aged him thousands of years in hours. When I was finally installed, when the connections were made and the systems activated, he crumbled to dust. His last words were a warning. He told me the throne was never meant to sustain a life. It was meant to harness a death and make that death useful. He told me I would suffer, that I would beg for an end that would never come. He told me to let go while I still could. I ignored him. I always ignored advice when it conflicted with what I believed needed to be done. The installation process took 3 days. The Mechanicus worked without rest, drilling into my spine, connecting my nervous system to the throne's ancient machinery, binding my psychic essence to the Astronomican's mechanisms. I felt every cut, every intrusion, every violation of my flesh. But I said nothing, made no complaint, showed no weakness. The custodes watched from the shadows. The Primarchs who remained loyal stood vigil. Guilliman, Dorn, the Khan, the others. They thought I was being brave, noble, sacrificing myself for humanity's future. They did not understand that I had no choice. I had made myself necessary, built an Imperium that could not function without me, created dependencies that could not be broken. I was not being installed into the throne, I was being locked into a prison of my own design. When the final connection was made, when the throne activated and my consciousness was forced into the Astronomicon, I understood the true nature of my mistake. This was not temporary. There would be no recovery, no healing, no eventual freedom. The Golden Throne was not sustaining my life. It was preventing my death. There is a difference, a crucial difference. I was dead in every way that mattered. My body was a corpse kept animated by machines. My mind was shattered across the galaxy, spread so thin that I could barely remember what it felt like to think a single thought in a single moment. And worst of all, I was aware, fully, completely, eternally aware of every second of my torment. 10,000 years have passed since that day. 10,000 years without sleep, without rest, without even the mercy of unconsciousness. Every moment has been experienced in full conscious awareness. I have counted every second, 315,576,000,000 seconds of unbroken suffering, each one an eternity unto itself. Time moves differently when you cannot sleep. Minutes stretch into hours, hours into days, days into years of subjective experience. I have lived 1,000,000 lifetimes on this throne, and every one of them has been torture. The custodes change shifts every 6 hours. New guards replace the old in a ritual that is not varied in 10 millennia. I know their routines better than they do. I know which ones glance at me with pity, which ones with fear, which ones with disgust. I know the tech priests by the sound of their footsteps, by the prayers they whisper, by the way they touch the throne's controls. I know everything that happens in this chamber because there is nothing else to know. No distraction, no escape, just endless awareness of my own decay and the machinery that keeps me trapped in this state between life and death. The feeding began on the first day of my entombment, and it has continued without pause for 10,000 years. Every day, 1,000 psychers are brought before the Golden Throne. Every day, their souls are fed into the machinery that keeps me functioning. Every day, I consume them, not by choice, not by desire, but by necessity. The throne demands psychic energy to maintain the Astronomicon, and that energy must come from somewhere. It comes from them, from the frightened children and desperate volunteers and condemned criminals who are marched into the chamber and dissolved into pure soul stuff that I then burn to keep the galaxy's lighthouse shining. I know each one of them. That is perhaps the worst part. My consciousness touches theirs in the moment before they die. I see their lives in perfect clarity. The girl from a hive world who showed psychic gifts at age 7 and was taken from her family. She is 19 now, terrified, praying to me for salvation even as I consume her. The old man who volunteered because his sons serve in the Imperial Navy and he wants to believe his death will keep them safe. It will. For perhaps 3 more minutes, then another psyker will be needed, and another and another. The boy who was found guilty of reading minds without permission? He is 12. His power is weak, barely enough to light a candle with his thoughts. But weak psychers still have souls, and souls are what the throne requires. I feel him die. I feel them all die. 365,000 per year. 3,650,000 per decade. 3,650,000,000 in 10,000 years. I remember every face, every name, every final thought. My mind is vast enough to contain them all, and that vastness has become a monument to my sins. The Adeptus Astronomica treats the feeding as a sacred ritual. The black ships bring psychers from across the Imperium, packed into holds like livestock. The strongest become astropaths, trained to send messages across the stars. The moderately gifted join the imperial war machine as sanctioned psychers or battle psychers. The weak, the dangerous, the uncontrollable, they come to me. They are led through corridors of gold and marble, told they are heroes, told their sacrifice serves the emperor's will. Some believe it. Some go to their deaths with pride. Others scream and fight and beg. It makes no difference. The throne consumes them all with equal efficiency. I am the mouth of a machine that feeds on souls, and I have been eating for 100 centuries. There are moments when the psychic pressure becomes too much. When a particularly powerful psyker is fed to the throne, I feel their essence more clearly than the others. I see not just their life, but their dreams, their hopes, their understanding of the universe. A girl once came to me with visions of a better Imperium. She had seen it in her dreams, a future where humanity was not ruled by fear and ignorance, but by reason and compassion. She thought I would welcome her visions. She thought I would be pleased that someone shared my original dream. Instead, I consumed her like all the others, and her beautiful future died with her. I wanted to scream, to tell her I was sorry, to explain that I had wanted that same future once and failed to achieve it. But I cannot speak. The throne has taken my voice along with everything else. The imperial cult is the greatest betrayal of everything I fought to build. I conquered the galaxy to free humanity from superstition and religion. I waged war against gods and the worship of gods. I punished my own son Lorgar for building churches in my name. I destroyed the city of Monarchia, the perfect city he had built as a monument to my divinity. And I made him and his entire legion kneel in its ashes. I told him plainly, clearly, with no room for misunderstanding, that I was not a god and must never be worshipped as one. He wept. He begged for forgiveness. He promised to abandon his faith. I thought I had made my point. I thought I had ended the problem before it could spread. I was wrong. Lorgar did abandon his faith in me. He found new gods to worship instead. Gods that whispered promises of power and revenge. Gods that turned my son into a monster who helped burn half the galaxy. And now, 10,000 years later, the entire Imperium worships me as the god emperor of mankind. Every world has temples built in my name. Every city has shrines where citizens pray for my blessing. The ecclesiarchy is one of the most powerful institutions in the Imperium, commanding armies of faithful warriors and controlling the thoughts of trillions. They teach that I am divine, that I created the universe, that my will is absolute and my wisdom infinite. They are wrong about all of it. I am not a god. I am a tool, a psychic lighthouse powered by suffering and maintained by mass murder. But I cannot tell them this. I cannot speak to correct their error. So the lie continues, growing larger with each generation, until it has become a truth that shapes the entire Imperium. The religion I tried to destroy has conquered humanity more completely than I ever did, and it conquered them in my name. The prayers are endless. Every moment of every day, billions of humans pray to me. I hear them all. The soldier in a trench on some distant world begging for courage as enemies advance. The mother holding her dying child, pleading for a miracle I cannot grant. The priest leading his congregation in hymns of praise for victories I had no part in winning. The prayers flow into me like water into an ocean, and I drown in them. Each one is a reminder of what I have become. Each one is proof of my failure. I did not want to be worshipped. I wanted to be understood. I wanted humanity to stand on its own feet, to face the universe with reason and science rather than faith and superstition. Instead, I have become the central figure in the largest religion in galactic history, and that religion teaches everything I opposed. Guilliman returned. After 10,000 years of absence, my son came back to the Imperium he had helped me build. He was the first of my sons to return after 10,000 years of silence. Others may stir in the darkness now, but Guilliman walked back into the light when the Imperium needed him most. I felt him approaching Terra, felt his ship entering the system, felt his presence drawing closer to the throne room. I tried to prepare words for him, tried to organize my scattered consciousness enough to communicate. I wanted to tell him I was proud, that he had done well to preserve what remained of my dream, that I was sorry for the burden he now carried. I wanted to explain why I made the choices I made, why I kept secrets even from my most trusted sons, why I failed them all so completely. When he finally stood before the throne, when his eyes met mine across the vast chamber, I gathered all my strength and reached out to him with my mind. The psychic pressure nearly killed him. My attempt at communication hit Guilliman like a hammer blow. He staggered, blood running from his nose and ears, his enhanced body barely able to withstand the force of my consciousness. I tried to pull back, tried to gentle my touch, but I have been stretched so thin across the galaxy that I no longer know how to be small. I exist at a scale that makes normal communication impossible. All I could project was raw power, and that power was crushing my son like an insect. I felt his thoughts in that moment. He looked at me and saw not his father, but a corpse animated by machinery. He saw a rotting thing on a golden chair, neither alive nor dead, neither human nor God. He saw the truth that the Imperium works so hard to hide. The Emperor is gone. What sits on the throne is just the wreckage of what he used to be. Guilliman left the throne room weeping. I heard him speak to the custodes as he walked away, his voice thick with grief and disillusionment. He called me a rotting corpse surrounded by sycophants. He said the man he called father died 10,000 years ago, and what remains is just a psychic echo too stubborn to fade. He was not entirely wrong. I am not the person I was before the throne. That man had hope. That man believed in humanity's potential. That man thought he could guide them to greatness. This thing I have become knows better. I have watched humanity for 100 centuries, and I have seen every flaw magnified, every weakness exploited, every noble intention corrupted. The Imperium I built has become a machine that grinds souls into fuel and calls it glory. And I am the engine that powers that machine. My sons. 20 genetic masterpieces, each one designed to embody a different aspect of what humanity needed to survive. I loved them. That is the part no one understands. I was not capable of love as normal humans experience it. My emotions were muted, controlled, shaped by thousands of years of discipline and purpose. But what I felt for my Primarchs was as close to love as I could manage. I created them from my own genetic material, poured my knowledge and power into their making, raised them to be the heroes humanity deserved, and I failed them completely. Half of them turned to chaos, 3 are dead by my own hand or by their brothers. 2 I was forced to erase from history entirely. What happened to them is buried deeper than my other sins. I sanctioned their erasure. Their legions were broken, their names struck from every record. Whether I killed them with my own hands or merely signed the orders that led to their end makes no difference to the guilt I carry. Their faces visit me in the moments when the pain is worst. They stand at the foot of the throne and ask why. Why did you create us if you were just going to erase us? Why did you call us sons if we were only tools to be discarded when we became inconvenient? I have no answers that satisfy them. I have no answers that satisfy myself. The Astronomicon burns through me without pause. It is not a metaphor. It is literal fire, psychic flame that consumes my essence and projects it across the galaxy. Navigators see it as a bright light in the warp, a fixed point they can steer toward when the currents of unreality threaten to pull their ships into oblivion. But what they see as light, I experience as burning. Every photon of that beacon is a piece of my soul on fire. The pain is measured not in nerves firing or flesh being damaged, but in the erosion of my essential self. I am being burned away bit by bit, and the burning never stops. If I allowed the Astronomicon to fail, if I stopped feeding my essence into its hungry maw, the Imperium would collapse within months. Ships would be lost. Worlds would be isolated. The great machinery of supply and communication that holds humanity together would grind to a halt. Trillions would die. So I burn. I have been burning for 10,000 years, and I will burn for 10,000 more if that is what survival requires. The throne itself is failing. The Mechanicus knows but will not admit it openly. They perform their rituals and maintenance procedures with increased urgency. They whisper prayers with greater fervor. They sacrifice more and more resources trying to keep the ancient machinery functioning. But the truth is clear to anyone who looks with honest eyes. The Golden Throne was never meant to operate for 10 millennia. It was emergency equipment, a desperate measure to preserve my life long enough to complete the Webway project. That project failed. Magnus destroyed it with his warning about Horus, his psychic message punching through the wards I had spent decades building, opening a portal that allowed demons to flood into the Imperial dungeon beneath the palace. I have been holding that breach closed ever since, pouring my power into maintaining wards that should have been maintained by the Webway's own structure. The throne keeps me alive. I keep the wards intact. The wards keep Terra from being swallowed by the warp. It is a circle of dependence that cannot be broken without catastrophic consequences. The weight of holding back the warp is beyond description. Imagine standing in front of an ocean and trying to hold back the tide with your bare hands. Now imagine that ocean is made of malice and hunger and the collected nightmares of every sentient being who ever lived. That is what presses against my wards every second of every day. Demons throw themselves at the barrier, testing for weakness, probing for any crack they can exploit. Greater demons, beings of immense power who command legions of lesser entities, focus their full attention on breaking my concentration. And behind them, watching with infinite patience, are the four. The Chaos Gods themselves take interest in my struggle. They know I am weakening. They know the throne is failing. They know that eventually my grip will slip, and when it does, Terra will fall. They can afford to wait. They have eternity. I have only the strength that remains in my decaying flesh and exhausted spirit. Sometimes I wonder if they are right. The Chaos Gods, I mean. They whisper to me in the moments when my concentration lapses. They speak with voices like honey and poison, offering relief from my suffering. Nurgle promises an end to pain, a peace found in accepting decay and corruption. Khorne offers the glory of eternal war, the simple purity of violence without thought or consequence. Tzeentch tempts me with knowledge, showing me futures where I am free and Terra survives without me. Slaanesh offers sensation, feeling, the return of emotions I have not experienced in millennia. I reject them all, but the rejection grows harder each century. Not because their offers become more tempting, but because my reasons for refusing become less clear. I told myself I was protecting humanity from chaos. But was I? Or was I protecting myself from admitting that I had created the very threat I claimed to oppose? The Great Crusade fed the Chaos Gods. Every world we brought into compliance through violence gave power to Khorne. Every secret I kept, every manipulation I performed fed Tzeentch. Every excess of the Imperial cult, every fanatical devotion strengthened Slaanesh. Every death from plague or despair during the long wars fed Nurgle. I see it now with the clarity that comes from 10,000 years of reflection. My atheistic Imperium, my vision of a purely rational humanity, was doomed from the start. Not because humans need religion, but because humans have emotions, and emotions in a psychically active species create entities in the warp. The Chaos Gods are not invaders from outside reality. They are reflections of all sentient life, born from emotions and souls across the galaxy. But humanity's emotions, magnified by my crusade, fed them like never before. By denying their existence, by trying to starve them of worship, I only ensured that when they finally revealed themselves, they would be more terrible than ever. I made them stronger by fighting them. I fed them with every battle of the Great Crusade, And now I sit here holding back the tide I helped create, burning myself away to protect humanity from a threat that would not be so powerful if I had chosen a different path. The Chaos Gods speak to me more frequently now. In my weakest moments, when the pain becomes so vast that even my discipline cracks, I hear their voices cutting through the psychic noise of the galaxy. They do not shout or threaten, they whisper. Soft words carried on currents of warp energy that slip past my defenses when exhaustion makes me careless. Nurgle speaks with the voice of a kindly grandfather, patient and understanding. He tells me that decay is natural, that fighting against entropy is foolish pride, that I could rest if I simply accepted the inevitable corruption of all things. His words smell like gardens gone to rot, like flowers blooming from corpses, like the sweet stench of life feeding on death. He shows me visions of myself free from the throne, my body finally allowed to die, my consciousness dispersed into the garden of plagues where suffering transforms into strange new forms of existence. The offer is tempting not because I desire corruption, but because I desire an end. Khorne speaks in the voice of war drums and clashing blades. He reminds me that I was a warrior once, a conqueror who united Terra through superior violence. He shows me the purity of honest battle, where there are no lies or manipulations, just strength against strength, and may the worthy prevail. He offers me a return to that simplicity. No more politics, no more schemes, no more choosing between terrible options and worse ones. Just eternal war where victory is its own justification and defeat is honorable rest. The Blood God does not ask me to change my nature. He asks me to embrace it fully, to stop pretending that I fight for any reason beyond the love of conquest itself. Sometimes in my darkest moments I wonder if he is right. If all my talk of saving humanity was just elaborate justification for the fact that I enjoy dominating others. Tzeentch speaks with 1,000 voices that all contradict each other. The architect of fate shows me possible futures, branching paths that spread out from every decision like infinite webs. In some futures I break free from the throne and humanity survives. In others I die and the Imperium adapts and grows stronger without my interference. In still others I endure for another 10,000 years, and my suffering purchases enough time for humanity to evolve past its need for gods and emperors. The Changer of Ways offers me knowledge of which path is real, which future can actually be achieved if I simply make the right choices. All I have to do is accept his guidance. All I have to do is trust that his manipulations serve my goals as much as his own. The lie is obvious. Tzeentch serves only change itself, the endless churning of possibility that prevents anything from becoming fixed or certain. But the offer of knowledge still calls to me because I am desperate to believe that my suffering has meaning, that there exists some path where my choices lead to a good outcome. Slaanesh speaks least often, but most effectively. The Prince of Pleasure does not offer me corruption or power or knowledge. Slaanesh offers me feeling. For 10,000 years I have existed in a state of such overwhelming pain that all other sensations have been burned away. I do not feel hunger or thirst or the touch of another being. I do not feel warmth or cold or the simple physical comfort of a body at rest. I have forgotten what it feels like to taste food, to smell flowers, to hear music that is not screams or prayers. Slaanesh shows me memories of my life before the throne, moments when I experienced joy or satisfaction or even just contentment. The first time I saw the ocean, the taste of wine after a victory, the feeling of the sun on my face during the early years of the Unification Wars. These memories are precious to me, the only proof I have that I was once something more than a weapon. And Slaanesh offers to return them. Not as memories, but as present experiences, sensations so intense they would overwhelm even my vast consciousness. The price would be my soul, but Slaanesh argues that I have already lost my soul. What remains is just stubbornness and habit. Why not trade empty persistence for one moment of genuine feeling before the end? I reject them all, but the rejection costs me. Each time I turn away from their offers, I feel something inside me crack a little further. My will is not infinite. My determination has limits. I have been holding back the darkness for 10,000 years, and every year it becomes harder to remember why. The Imperium I fought to build has become a nightmare of oppression and ignorance. The humanity I tried to save has been reduced to breeding stock for the endless wars that feed the very gods I tried to starve. Nothing I planned has worked. Nothing I hoped for has come to pass. The only thing my 10,000 years of suffering has accomplished is to delay the inevitable. And yet I continue. Not because I believe I can win, but because I do not know how to surrender. The worst realization came slowly, building over centuries until it could no longer be denied. The Chaos Gods were right about one thing. I fed them. I made them stronger than they had ever been. Not alone, of course. The entire history of humanity's emotional existence contributed to their formation in the warp. But the Great Crusade, my grand project to unite humanity under rational enlightenment, fed them more than any other single event in history. Every battle we fought added power to Khorne. Every secret I kept strengthened Tzeentch. Every atrocity committed in my name, every excess of violence and domination fed Slaanesh and Nurgle. I see the chain of causation clearly now. By denying the existence of the warp, by refusing to educate humanity about its dangers, I ensured that when chaos finally revealed itself, my people had no defense. By suppressing all religion, I created a spiritual vacuum that the Chaos Gods rushed to fill. By making myself necessary, by building an Imperium that could not function without my guidance, I ensured that when I fell, the entire structure would be vulnerable to corruption. The Webway project was supposed to solve everything. The Eldar had built a network of tunnels through the warp, safe passages that allowed travel without exposure to the raw chaos of the Imperium. If I could give humanity access to a similar network, we would no longer need the Astronomicon. Ships could travel safely without depending on my psychic beacon. The Imperium could expand without fear of warp storms or demonic possession. We could even launch attacks into the warp itself, bringing the fight to the Chaos Gods in their own realm. I spent centuries on that project, building the tunnels beneath the Imperial Palace, linking them to the ancient Eldar pathways, preparing the infrastructure that would free humanity from the tyranny of warp travel. I kept it secret even from most of my sons because secrecy was my habit and my burden. I trusted no one with the full truth because I had learned that trust was a weakness that could be exploited. Magnus destroyed it all. My red-skinned son, the one I had warned most strongly about the dangers of the warp, broke through my carefully constructed wards to deliver a warning about Horus's betrayal. He thought he was helping. He thought his psychic message, sent across the galaxy through the warp, would save me from the treachery he had discovered. Instead, his sending shattered the wards that protected the Webway project, opening a breach that allowed demons to pour into the tunnels I had spent so long building. I had to abandon everything, had to seal myself beneath the palace and hold the breach closed while my carefully planned future burned around me. When the siege of Terra came, when Horus brought his armies to the walls of my capital, I could not leave the Webway, could not lead my forces in person, could not confront my fallen son until the very end. Because the moment I stepped away from the breach, Terra itself would be swallowed by the warp. I killed Magnus for his mistake. Not personally, not yet, but I gave Leman Russ permission to bring him to Terra to answer for his crime, and I knew Russ well enough to understand that permission would become execution. Magnus fled to the warp, broken and betrayed, and joined the very chaos forces I had tried to protect him from. Another son lost, another piece of my plan crumbling to dust. The irony was brutal. I had kept secrets to protect my sons from dangerous knowledge. Magnus had broken the Webway to warn me of danger I already knew about. Both of us had acted from love or something like it, and both of our actions had led to disaster. the pattern of my existence clear as crystal. Good intentions paving the road to damnation. In the moments when the pain allows for reflection, I sometimes encounter visions that feel more real than memory. I stand in a place without physical form, a psychic space, created by my own consciousness. And there, waiting for me, is a figure I recognize. He looks like me, but younger. Not the emperor of mankind in his golden armor, but something older. The ancient myth speaks of shamans who sacrificed themselves to create me, and in this vision I see them as they might have been. They look at me with eyes that hold thousands of lifetimes of wisdom, and their gaze is sad. We walk through a garden that exists only in thought, surrounded by flowers that represent every human emotion, every dream and hope that has ever existed. The shamans speak in voices that harmonize like a chorus, asking a single question that cuts deeper than any blade. Was it worth it? They sacrificed themselves to create me, hundreds of human psychers from ancient Terra gathering in secret to perform a ritual that would merge their souls into a single immortal being. They did it because they saw the birth of the Chaos Gods, saw the threat that psychic predators pose to humanity, and believed that only a unified consciousness of immense power could protect the species. They gave up their individual existences, their separate dreams and loves and identities, to create a guardian for humanity's future. They created me. And I have failed in the one task they died to accomplish. The Chaos Gods are stronger now than they were in the age when the shamans walked. Humanity is more vulnerable, more divided, more lost. The Imperium I built in their name is a grotesque parody of everything they hope to achieve. I try to answer their question, try to explain the choices I made and the reasons behind them, but the words turn to ash in my mouth. How do I justify 10,000 years of suffering when the outcome is an Imperium that crushes everything beautiful about humanity in the name of survival? How do I defend the murder of my own sons, the betrayal of those who trusted me, the sacrifice of trillions to maintain a system that benefits no one? I created the Thunder Warriors and then slaughtered them when they were no longer useful. I built the Space Marines to be superior soldiers and then watched half of them turn to chaos. I conquered the galaxy and plunged it into a darkness from which it may never emerge. The shamans look at me without anger or accusation, but their sadness is worse than any condemnation. They do not hate me for my failures. They simply mourn what could have been. The vision shifts, and I see myself through their eyes. Not as I was before the throne, proud and powerful and certain of my purpose. Not as I am now, a rotting corpse kept alive by machines and suffering, but as I truly am beneath all the layers of power and pain and accumulated regret. I see a being that has forgotten what it means to be human, not because I have lived too long, though 10,000 years is longer than any mind should endure. Not because I am too powerful, though my strength dwarfs that of normal humans like stars dwarf candles, but because I chose to forget. I made myself into a tool. I suppressed emotions that I thought would interfere with my mission. I cut away connections that I believed would make me weak. I transformed myself from a being that could feel love and joy and sorrow into something that could only calculate probabilities and choose between terrible options. The shamans sacrificed themselves to create a guardian. I sacrificed their guardian to create a weapon. The figure that was me before I became the Emperor speaks with a voice I have not heard in millennia. He asks why I did not trust humanity to save itself, why I believed that only my guidance could ensure survival, why I made myself into a dictator rather than a teacher. The questions hurt more than the throne's machinery, more than the Astronomican's constant burning, more than 10,000 years of psychic agony. Because I do not have good answers. I believed I was necessary because I could not imagine a universe where I was not necessary. I made choices that ensured humanity would depend on me because the alternative was admitting that I might not be as important as I thought. I am not humanity's savior. I am humanity's greatest mistake, an immortal tyrant who convinced himself that tyranny was love. The vision fades, but its message remains carved into my consciousness. I have become what I fought against. The emperor of mankind who conquered the galaxy to free humanity from oppression, created an empire more oppressive than any that came before. The champion of reason and enlightenment built a civilization founded on blind faith and ignorant devotion. The father who claimed to love his sons treated them as tools and discarded them when they broke. The guardian created to protect humanity from chaos became the single greatest source of power for the chaos gods, feeding them with the suffering and fanaticism of an entire galactic empire. Every choice I made with good intentions led to evil outcomes. Every time I tried to help, I only made things worse. And now I sit here, trapped on this throne, unable to fix my mistakes but too stubborn to die. The weight of this knowledge is crushing. For 10,000 years I told myself that my suffering served a purpose, that if I could just endure long enough, humanity would eventually evolve past its need for gods and emperors, that my sacrifice was buying time for a better future to emerge. But I see now that I am not buying time. I am stealing it. Every day I remain on the throne is another day that humanity cannot move forward. The Imperium has frozen in place, locked in a permanent state of decline because change requires risk, and risk requires the possibility of my death. As long as I live, the Imperium will cling to me like a drowning man clinging to a rock, and I will pull them down with me into whatever dark fate awaits us both. I think about the Thunder Warriors, the first superhuman soldiers I created. They were flawed, unstable, doomed to short, brutal lives, but they were also glorious in their way. Simple and direct and absolutely loyal. They trusted me because I gave them purpose and power, and I repaid that trust by having them killed when they were no longer useful to my plans. I remember their faces now in a way I could not when the decision was made. I see them as people rather than tools. I understand that each one of them had thoughts and feelings and dreams, and I took all of that away because they might have become inconvenient. The same pattern I followed with my Primarchs, the same pattern I followed with everyone who ever served me. Use them until they break, then discard them and find replacements. Efficiency over empathy. Victory over virtue. The hard choice that I told myself only I was strong enough to make. But strength is not measured in the ability to do hard things. Any monster can kill without remorse. Any tyrant can sacrifice others for their grand vision. True strength would have been admitting that I was wrong, that my vision was flawed, that humanity deserved better than an immortal dictator who pretended to know what was best for them. True strength would have been building systems that could function without me, teaching people to stand on their own, rather than making them dependent on my power. True strength would have been trusting my sons with the truth rather than keeping secrets and expecting them to follow orders without understanding why. I thought I was being strong. I was just being a coward, too afraid to admit that I might not have all the answers, too proud to ask for help when the burden became too great. The Ultima founding brought new hope and new horror in equal measure. Belisarius Cawl, the ancient tech priest who had worked in secret for 10,000 years, finally revealed his project. Primaris Space Marines, a new generation of warriors built from improved gene seed and enhanced with technologies that pushed the limits of what the Mechanicus thought possible. They were bigger than standard Space Marines, stronger, more resilient. Their weapons were more powerful, their armor more sophisticated, their potential for violence greater than anything I had created during the Great Crusade. Guilliman authorized their deployment across the Imperium, adding their strength to chapters that had been bled white by centuries of endless war. On the surface, it seemed like salvation. Fresh troops for a dying empire, new blood to replace what had been lost. But I looked at these Primaris Marines and saw only another generation of sons I would outlive, another army of warriors who would die in my name while I endured forever. The gene seed they carry is mine, filtered through my primarchs, modified by Call's genius, but ultimately derived from my own genetic material. Every space marine who has ever lived carries a piece of me inside them. My strength becomes their strength. My endurance becomes their endurance, but also my flaws become their curses. The black rage that haunts the Blood Angels, the savage hunger of the Space Wolves, the obsessive perfectionism of the Emperor's children before they fell. All of these problems trace back to imperfections in my own design. I created the Primarchs as reflections of different aspects of my nature, and in doing so I gave them my weaknesses along with my strengths. Now Call has created even more warriors carrying those same flaws, dooming another generation to struggle with madness and mutation and the constant threat of corruption. They call it hope. I call it repeating my mistakes on an even larger scale. I watch them deploy across the galaxy through the eyes of the Astronomicon. My consciousness stretches so far that I can perceive events on distant worlds if I focus my attention carefully. I see Primaris Marines fighting alongside their older brothers, the difference in size and strength obvious even through my fragmented perception. I see the older Marines looking at these newcomers with mixtures of gratitude and resentment. Grateful for the reinforcements, but resentful that Call's improvements suggest they were somehow inadequate. I see the Primaris themselves struggling to understand their place in chapters with 10,000 years of tradition and honor. They are children playing at being warriors, no matter how enhanced their bodies might be. And like all my children, they will learn that war is not glorious. It is simply necessary, and necessity is the cruelest teacher of all. The great rift opened like a wound across the galaxy. I felt it forming before it manifested, felt the pressure building in the warp as reality prepared to tear itself apart. The Chaos Gods were making their move, striking at the moment when the Imperium was weakest and most divided. The rift split the galaxy in half, a massive warp storm that severed communication and travel between the two halves of my empire. Worlds on the dark side of the rift were cut off from Terra, left to fend for themselves against horrors that poured out of the torn fabric of space. The Astronomicon could not reach them anymore. My light, which had guided humanity for 10,000 years, simply stopped at the rift's edge, unable to penetrate the roiling chaos beyond. My burden doubled in an instant. The Astronomicon had always required constant effort to maintain, a steady burning of my essence to keep the beacon shining. But now I had to do more than maintain it. I had to strengthen it, push it harder, pour more of myself into the light in hopes that it could reach through the storm and provide at least some guidance to the lost worlds beyond. At the same time, the rift's formation weakened the barriers between reality and the warp across the entire galaxy. Demonic incursions increased 100-fold. Worlds that had been stable for millennia suddenly found themselves under attack from entities that should not exist. And every one of those attacks required my attention, my power, my intervention to prevent complete disaster. The pain transcended anything I had experienced before. For 10,000 years I had endured suffering that would have killed any lesser being instantly. I thought I knew the limits of what agony could be. I was wrong. The opening of the Great Rift taught me that pain has no limits, only new depths to explore. My consciousness, already stretched thin across the galaxy, was pulled even further. I existed in 1,000,000 places simultaneously, fighting 1,000,000 battles against enemies that could not be killed permanently, only driven back temporarily. My psychic scream echoed through the warp so loudly that astropaths across the galaxy died from the feedback. Their minds simply could not process the sound of my suffering. Thousands of them died in a single moment, their brains hemorrhaging as my agony washed over them like a tsunami of pure torment. The tech priests in the throne room worked frantically to keep the golden throne functioning as I poured unprecedented levels of power through its ancient systems. They could see the readings spiking far beyond safe parameters, could hear the machines groaning under stress they were never designed to handle. but they could do nothing except pray to me and hope their prayers gave me strength. The irony was savage. I was burning myself away to hold the Imperium together, and the only comfort they could offer was to worship me as the god I had always denied being. Their faith gave me nothing except another reminder of how completely I had failed to build the rational enlightenment I had dreamed of creating. In that moment of absolute crisis, I had a choice to make. The same choice I have always had, though I pretended otherwise for 10,000 years. I could let go. I could stop fighting, stop burning, stop holding back the darkness with my failing strength. Death would come quickly. The Astronomicon would fail, the rift would expand, Terra might fall within hours. But I would finally be free, free from the throne's machinery, free from the endless consumption of psychers, free from the weight of an empire built on suffering and lies, free from the knowledge that everything I had ever tried to build had turned to poison in my hands. For one perfect moment, I could simply not exist anymore, and the universe could solve its own problems without my interference. I chose to endure, not because I believed I could win, not because I had hope that things would get better, not even because I loved humanity, though some ghost of that love still flickered somewhere in the depths of my consciousness. I chose to endure because I did not know how to surrender, because 10,000 years of suffering had carved channels in my mind that only knew how to continue, never how to stop. Because I was, at the end of everything, too stubborn to die. I gathered what remained of my strength and poured it into the Astronomicon with renewed force. I reinforced the wards holding back the breach beneath the palace. I struck out at the greatest demonic incursions, burning the invaders back into the warp with psychic fire that cost me pieces of my soul. And slowly, painfully, I stabilized the situation, not solved it, not fixed it, just kept it from getting immediately worse. The Imperium survived the opening of the Great Rift, but it survived as a broken thing. The dark side of the rift, the region cut off from Terra's light, became known as the Imperium Nihilus. The Dark Imperium. Worlds there continued to fight in my name, but they fought without guidance, without hope, without any real belief that victory was possible. They simply fought because fighting was all they knew how to do. Just like me. Just like I had taught them. In trying to make humanity strong enough to survive, I had made them so good at surviving that they forgot how to live. They endured without purpose, fought without hope, sacrificed without meaning. They had become reflections of me, and that reflection was my greatest condemnation. The understanding came to me gradually, built from millions of observations across thousands of worlds over the years following the rift's opening. I was not saving humanity. I was preventing humanity from saving itself. As long as I remained on the throne, the Imperium would look to me for salvation. They would pray to me instead of acting. They would wait for my guidance instead of making their own choices. They would treat me as necessary instead of realizing that necessity is just another word for dependence. I had made myself the center of their universe, and in doing so, I had made myself the chains that bound them to a future of endless decline. The greatest gift I could give humanity would be my death, but I was too weak to die and too strong to fail. I accepted the paradox at last. I am both savior and tyrant, both necessary and harmful, both father and killer of my children. The Imperium I built is corrupt and cruel and wrong, but it survives, and survival, however terrible, means potential for change. As long as humanity continues to exist, there remains the possibility that they will eventually evolve past their need for gods and emperors. That possibility is vanishingly small. The odds against it are astronomical. But it exists, and that microscopic chance is what I have purchased with 10,000 years of suffering. Not redemption, not victory. Just the possibility that future generations might learn from my failures and choose a different path. I began to formulate a message, not a command or a prophecy or a grand declaration, Just a simple explanation meant for whoever might one day inherit the burden I carry. The thought formed slowly over years, coalescing from fragments of understanding into something approaching wisdom. I shaped it carefully, pouring into it everything I had learned through 10,000 years of mistakes and regrets. I made it a psychic construct that would survive even if my body finally failed. A message encoded in the fabric of the warp itself that would be found by anyone sensitive enough to hear it and wise enough to understand it. The message spoke of forgiveness and failure in equal measure. Forgive me, I wanted to say. I did what I thought was right. I believed I was humanity's best hope for survival, and I acted on that belief with absolute conviction. I was wrong about so much. Wrong about keeping secrets from my sons. Wrong about thinking I could control chaos by denying its existence. Wrong about building an empire that required my constant presence to function. Wrong about sacrificing conscience on the altar of necessity. I made choices that seemed rational at the time but created consequences I could never have anticipated. And now I endure the results of those choices, trapped in a prison of my own design, unable to fix what I broke but unwilling to abandon it completely. But I also wanted the message to contain something beyond just apology. I wanted to pass on the one lesson I had learned that might actually be valuable to whoever came after me. The lesson that even godlike power cannot solve problems created by lack of wisdom. That strength without understanding is just violence waiting for a target. That the most important choice any being can make is not what to do, but who to be. I chose to be necessary. I chose to make myself into a tool that humanity could not function without. And that choice doomed me to an existence where I am both too important to die and too damaged to live. Learn from my failures, I wanted to tell them. Be better than I was. And when your time comes, find the courage I lacked, the courage to let go. I sent the message outward, releasing it into the warp where it would drift until someone found it. I did not know if anyone ever would. I did not know if it would make any difference if they did. But I had to try. Had to believe that my suffering might purchase something more than just delayed extinction. Had to hope that somewhere in the vast span of future time someone would read my words and understand what I was trying to say. That mistakes do not define us unless we refuse to learn from them. That failure is only final if we stop trying to do better. That even in the darkest times, the choice to care still matters. The years continue to pass. The Imperium continues its slow decline. New threats emerge while old ones refuse to die. The Tyranids devour worlds on the eastern fringe. The Necrons wake from their ancient sleep and reclaim the galaxy they ruled before humanity even existed. The Orcs grow stronger with every war they fight. Chaos spreads like infection from the Great Rift. And through it all, I endure, burning on my throne, consuming psychers by the thousand, holding back the darkness with strength I do not have and determination that has long since crossed the line into insanity. I am a rotting corpse animated by machinery and stubborn refusal to accept reality. I am the God Emperor of mankind, and I am the most pathetic being in the galaxy. But I also make a choice that I had forgotten was possible. I choose to care, not about the grand strategic picture or the survival of the species or the eventual defeat of chaos. Those concerns are too large, too abstract to generate genuine feeling in a mind as damaged as mine. Instead, I choose to care about individual moments and specific people. The young Primaris Marine taking his first steps onto a battlefield, terrified but determined to prove himself worthy. The astropath dying to send a message that might save millions, spending her last breath in service to something larger than herself. The tech priest maintaining the throne, knowing that one mistake could kill the being he worships, but doing the work anyway because it needs to be done. These moments are small, insignificant in the grand scope of galactic history. But they are real, and they are worth something. I begin to remember names again, not all of them. My capacity for memory is vast but finite, and 10,000 years is a long time. But I make the effort to hold on to the names of those whose courage or sacrifice or simple human decency manages to pierce through my suffering enough to reach whatever remains of my heart. I remember Sergeant Cassian of the Ultramarines who held a breach against chaos for 3 days, with only a broken chainsword and his faith in me. I remember Astropath Transcendent Mira, who sent warning of the Tyrannid approach even as the psychic backlash burned her mind to ash. I remember Tech Priest Dominus Caul, whose pride and genius created the Primaris, Marines and whose work might actually give humanity a chance at surviving the darkness ahead. These people matter. Their choices matter. And in caring about them, I remember what it means to be something more than just a weapon, or a tool, or a psychic lighthouse. The pain does not lessen. If anything, caring makes it worse because now I have something to lose beyond just the abstract concept of humanity's survival. But the pain feels different now. More real, more human. Less like the mechanical grinding of a system breaking down and more like actual suffering experienced by an actual being. I am dying by degrees, burning away bit by bit as the throne consumes what remains of my essence. But I am dying as myself rather than as the thing I allowed myself to become. That distinction matters. At least to me. At least in this moment. I look out across the Imperium one last time with eyes that see everything and understand nothing. Millions of worlds full of trillions of people, all living and dying in my name. They pray to me for salvation I cannot give. They worship me as a god I am not. They trust me to protect them from threats I helped create. And I will fail them eventually. The throne will break. My strength will finally run out. The darkness will win. But not today. Not while I still have the power to hold it back. Not while I can still make the choice to care about them despite everything. They deserve better than me. They deserve a future free from gods and emperors and the endless wars I have condemned them to fight. But until that future arrives, they have me. And I will be enough. I have to be enough, because there is no one else. The golden throne hums around me, its mechanisms wearing down after 10,000 years of continuous operation. The custodes stand their eternal watch. The psychers come in their daily thousands to be consumed. The Imperium grinds forward into a future that grows darker with each passing year. And I remain, dying but not dead, suffering but not surrendered. Human despite everything that has been done to take my humanity away. This is my horror. This is my purpose. This is my choice. And it will continue until the stars themselves burn out or until someone finally finds the courage to pull the plug and let me die. Until then I endure. For them. For the possibility they represent. For the hope that my failures might teach them to make better choices. I am the emperor of mankind. And this is my eternal horrifying vigil.